Mm. And I think it's things like that. And I think one of the reasons why conservatives tend to, I guess we like document the failure, you'll tweet about it, but no one really does anything, is because it really is, when you look along political lines, it's really a city mouse, country mouse dialectic, where the conservatives live in the country and live outside major cities, and major cities are highly liberal. I mean, we know that. You look at any electoral map, where the liberal population centers, those are going to be Los Angeles, San Francisco, and so on and so forth. Whereas you have entire states that are red, that are you're rural, and they call them the flyover states. But do you see, and obviously in New Hampshire having tremendous rural areas, do you see this bleeding over into more conservative areas, or is this relegated to cities? Because if it's relegated to cities, then conservatives are going to go, oh, that's cities, that's Democratic leadership, let's get the hell out.
Well, in regards to the 15-minute city stuff, yeah, I mean, but you got to understand, that's the most extreme far left of the far left. What is absolutely bleeding over into conservative areas right now is what's going on in the schools. And I hear this all the time from conservatives. They say, I live in a red area, I don't need to worry about that. No, 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 no. You are not safe if you live in a rural area. You are not safe if you live in a conservative area, because the problem with the public schools is the teaching pool that has come out of colleges and higher education, colleges of education. And so the same teaching pool that services these progressive cities are also in the teaching pool in rural areas, because those are the ones that are accredited or licensed to teach by the state boards of education. And I promise you, I can go on to, and this is actually scary, because I actually train parents how to go onto their schools' websites and to find out what the schools are teaching. This is called my Schools Exposed program. People can find out more about it at schoolsexposed.com. And you can find all of this with publicly available information, where I actually teach parents how to go on and find their school policy documents, find the professional development training that their teachers are getting, find their diversity and equity staff, find all their plans, because a lot of these school districts have plans for like 10 years to integrate equity into the school system. And I can go on to pretty much any school district website in this country and show you exactly how they're teaching your kids critical race theory and gender ideology in the schools right now. You could tell me any school district, I can go in blind. That includes in the state of Florida. I've done it in the state of Florida. I actually was looking into Tampa last week. It's in Tampa. I know it's in my Miami-Dade, something like Broward. That's what it is. Yeah, it's absolutely there. And so this is in every single school district in the country. And I think that a lot of conservatives believe they're safe when they're not.
How do we change that?
This is a hard answer, and this is a hard truth that people need to face. Taking over the school boards is not going to change it. Because unless you live in Vermont and Connecticut, the school board actually has no official power over the curriculum that's being taught in schools. And whatever the teacher wants to teach when they close that door is what's going to be taught. How we change it is that we need a massive revolution in public education in this country. I think the only way out of this is to completely separate government and education. Now, that's going to be a hard thing for people to hear. But if you want to protect your kids, the very best thing you can do is to take them out of the public schools and homeschool them. And I know a lot of people can't do that. That's scary. But I think that is a reality that we need to start facing up to. And there are a lot of innovations going on in homeschooling in terms of creating these homeschooling pods. So it's not just you, it's a whole bunch of families coming together. And I've talked to kids. I actually met a bunch of homeschool kids in New Hampshire last week, where these are kids who had been to public schools. And I said, these were like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. And I said, what's the difference between public school and this homeschool pod thing that you're doing? And they all told me, they said, public school is just busy work. It is a complete waste of our time to be there. We're learning so much more this way. And these are engaged, smart, young people. This is the future. This is the only way forward.
And they're not exposed to, the things that you're exposed to. My oldest son is in 6th grade. He's going to be in 7th grade. And I was in 6th and 7th grade in the 94, 95 area. And I remember, I went to public school. I remember getting into 7th grade, and that's where kids started experimenting with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So I think if your kids are, especially at that really tender age of, pre-teenhood, that would be a good time to probably get them out, if not earlier, if you can. Now, my kids are in private school, and so far what you're talking about has not reached them yet. But people say private schools and charter schools, those are not immune from what's going on, correct?
No, those are not immune either because it's the same teaching pool. Now, they can be, if they're a good private school, they can effectively keep that stuff out because they can hire whoever they want as teachers in the private school. But the fact is that private schools can sometimes actually be worse than public schools because you can't push back on the private school. If you, as a parent, sign your kids up, you probably had to, I mean, Eric, I bet this is true for you. You had to sign some sort of paper saying that you would abide by the school policies and all that stuff with the private school.
Of course.
Well, what happens when you try to push back on you're teaching critical race theory, you're teaching gender ideology? The school can say, we're a private school, we don't want you here anymore, go away. And it's much easier for them to kick you out of private school than it is to do it in public school. So while you actually have more leverage in public school to be able to speak up and fight back, you do have to be careful when it comes to the private and charter schools.
True. I mean, and I again, I'm happy with the private school experience thus far. And look, effectively, I think, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, we're their customers. So if you have a legitimate gripe, I mean, they will get back to you and they'll treat you with respect. But at the same time, Carlin, you're right, because there's a waiting list a mile long. They're like, okay, if we lose your tuition, we're going to pick it up again in 2 minutes. And that tuition statement, at the top of it is a corporation. It's a corporation. It's a business that's operating. And again, public school that's the go-to for most people because private school may be financially prohibitive. There might not be a charter school or one worthy around. Homeschool, yeah, I mean that's a commitment, and it really, if you have two parents that work, it's very difficult for one parent, to go, oh my God, how am I going to teach my kids stuff that I forgot 30 years ago? But you're right. So they have like homeschool communities where these communities come together and say, okay, like we're almost going to form our own school. How do those work? And how do they get accredited by the state, or how does that work? So the state can come in and say, well, hey, you're illegally operating a school.
Yeah, I mean, every state has different homeschool laws, so I would encourage everyone to look into the laws of their own state. But I know in New Hampshire, there are whole, businesses that have built up over providing homeschool pods a place to go. So just multiple families come together, and even think about it: if you and 10 of your friends get together and pool your money, especially because school choice is getting more and more popular in state legislators, so you might actually be able to take the money that from the state that you normally would have gotten sent to public schools, take all that money, pool it together, hire a private tutor for your kids, hire a private tutor, rent out some sort of building that isn't being used for anything else, have that be your school for your kids. There are a lot of innovative ways that you can do this. And I understand that people are afraid of venturing into something new like this, but I promise you, I keep trying to tell people, like, you know what? The inconvenience of figuring out how to homeschool your children is going to pale in comparison to the inconvenience of that you are going to experience when your little darling at 13 years old comes home and announces that they are trans, and they've probably been transitioned in the school for a while now, because remember, the school doesn't have to tell you when your kids change their gender at school. So this could have been going on for 6 months a year at the school. Your little darling now comes home and tells you, I'm trans, and wants to go on the puberty blockers, and you don't want to put them on the puberty blockers because you don't think they're trans. But then the state, who has already passed a law saying that they can take away your children starting at the age of 12, which has happened now in California and Washington. They literally have laws that says the school psychologist can recommend that children get taken out of the home starting at age 12 if they don't receive the life-saving care that they get from puberty blockers. So now you're in a position where your kid has been gender transitioned by the school. They want to go on puberty blockers. Your state has a law saying if you don't put them on puberty blockers, they can take them away. I'm sorry, but figuring out how to homeschool your kid is going to be a lot better than that. I know two different parents who had their children trans by the schools within a couple of meetings. We're talking within an afternoon club that the parent didn't even know that they were in. And they had to spend months or years undoing that afterwards. So I understand that homeschool is scary. I really do. But it's going to be much better than that situation.